I'm Lindsay Hamm. I'm in the sociology department. I came to Purdue in 2017 and immediately started teaching giant classes. So I teach the very large section of social problems. So maybe some of you took it, know people who've taken it with me, but I wanted my students to be able to write and to get feedback on it. So I started working with the teaching and learning technology group on campus to develop a neural network enabled, so an AI enabled paper feedback giver. And then it's just taken off from there. And this semester, we actually launched it with qualitative feedback for students on their early drafts. And it's been so far a really great success. Students have really enjoyed working with it. And I'm moving forward with the Writing Center to make sure that we're doing everything as pedagogically sound as we can. So fun facts about me, I went down to see the totality with my family yesterday. We drove down to Hemlock Nature Preserve, which ended up mostly being the grass around some cornfields. But it was a great view of the totality. So that was really nice. I'll pass it on to the next person.
Thanks, Lindsay. That's fun. Go ahead.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I guess I'd like to start my part of the introduction with this famous example, Roger Sheffer's Monsters in a Tunnel. I'm sure most of you have seen this famous example. I think this picture describes exactly what I've been working on. So what you see here, we as humans, what we see here is not just some objects in a scene, right? We see a story. We see two monsters are running as opposed to stand still on one foot, and their intent being one is chasing the another, as opposed to trying to copy their body movements, and their mental states being hostile or being afraid, even though actually the two faces are identical. So the takeaway message is that first of all, none of this inferences is absolutely true, right? Everything is sort of implied in nature and diffusible with additional context. So a great deal of such intuitive common sense inferences can be best described using natural language, and that's what I've been studying, linguistics, and full scope of language in use, not just words. And I study questions about how and why humans routinely arrive at interpretations that are much, much richer than what's literally conveyed. And that's the beautiful thing about human intelligence, right? Which is we can think out loud and just reason on the fly. And this kind of robust intelligence is exactly what's missing in current AI models, and they just fail very easily with very simple change in the prompts, right? So I've been studying how to improve AI systems flexibility and just locate where they fail, right? So, and if you can click on the slide, I think I actually add animations. Oh yeah, so just some other information about me. My background, as you know now, is in linguistics, and I'm a linguist, and I study robust intelligence and improve AI models' linguistic capacity. And Yejin Choi is my inspiration. She's a computer scientist, a great Asian woman, so as a role model to me. And yeah, bucket list, I'd love to go to Iceland someday. That's about me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Yan. Okay, it looks like Kaylyn, you're up.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Kaylyn Jackson Schiff. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, and I'm also the co-director of the Governance and Responsible AI Lab at Purdue, or GRAIL, as we call it. So within political science, I'm really interested in how government is starting to use AI and how AI is impacting people's relationship with government. So this entails looking at things like how AI is being used to provide services for citizens, how it's being used in policing, how it's being used for communication between elected representatives and the public. And I'm also doing work in building a database of all of the laws and regulations that are coming out related to AI, as well as studying the impacts of AI on political processes like elections. So I'm thinking about deep fakes, fake videos, fake audio that are coming out that might have particular impacts on politicians or political events. Okay, so some brief information about me. So I do work, as you see here, on AI and technology for citizen engagement. I'm fortunate to be funded by a grant to study work on AI and technology in policing, and I'm building this political deepfakes incidents database. I'm trying to have some broader impact with my work too, given that this is a really big time for grappling with the policy challenges around AI. So helping to build the Academic Alliance for AI Policy. And I and my lab have been part of the AI Safety Institute Consortium under the National Institute for Standards and Technology. So my inspiration also comes from my background working as an elementary school teacher and as a school administrator. So when I'm thinking about all of these impacts of policies, of government administration on individuals, I'm thinking back to some of my experiences in teaching and administration. And then quickly about my hobbies. So I really like to do pure barre classes. So I have a picture there of recently hitting my 50 class mark. I love to bake, so I have some chocolate chip scones there that I made. And I've been increasingly getting into bird watching. And I have a picture that I took there from a smart bird feeder that I have, where it takes pictures of the birds that are on my feeder. And it uses AI to identify sort of a image recognition algorithm to then tell me the types of birds that have visited my feeder. So that's a little bit about me.
I did not know we have smart bird feeders. That's just amazing, Kaylyn.
We
Okay.
do. It's called a bird buddy, if anyone's interested.
I think we do have someone that actually said something about that. So yay.
Oh,
Interesting.
yay.
So thank you. Ladies, I do want to remind you there's quite a number of questions already in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and just kind of think through of how we're going to answer those questions, that would be great. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, and then we've got the next guest is going to be sharing is Maggie, I think. Maggie. Yep. Here we go. Thank you, Maggie.
Absolutely. So my name is Maggie Reisdorf. I use she, her pronouns, and I am our Associate Director in the Office of the Dean of Students, specifically with student rights and responsibilities. So I am much more on the student affairs side of the house. And essentially, my work, a lot of it with artificial intelligence, involves academic integrity and ethical use for students. So my area within this, I have done academic integrity, artificial intelligence presentations for our Big Ten conduct administrators, for student conduct administrators nationally at our student conduct conference. So certainly the integrity aspect of it, in combination with being creative and being able to have fun with it, and for students to be able to explore more of their interests more in depth and kind of work smarter in their efforts is all a combination of my interests there. But team's a big inspiration. Then you've got a feature of my dog Leo, who is napping next to me, and we hope that he stays napping the duration of this.
That's sweet. Thank you. I think all of you have pets next to you, actually, don't you? and it, and it maybe one time they might come and make an appearance. I think that would be sweet. And so we're very friendly, animal friendly on this call. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, let's go ahead and kick it off with the Q&A, some questions that I have. So how this will work is that I'll ask them just some basic questions, and then we'll get into a little bit deeper in about this topic. And then I want to give some room for you all to go ahead and pose your questions, which a number of you have already had. Stephanie, I'm going to have to ask you to help me with those questions because it's hard for me to toggle back and forth with those. And then we will end it with a fun, we can't do lightning round because we've got 4 people here, but we will do Never Have I Ever at the end. And it'd be fun if everybody participated in Never Have I Ever. So if you've never done that, I'll explain it later at the end. So let's go ahead and get started with the Q&A. I think, Kaylyn, you were going to just actually kick it off by just giving us some basic understanding of the terms of, like a deep fake and all those. If you could just kind of like navigate us through those different terms, that would be great for the audience, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I can kick it off, and then I'll definitely turn it over to others as well to expand. So you may have heard terms like ChatGPT or AI or machine learning or generative AI. And so we just wanted to make sure that we're all slightly on the same page with regards to what we're talking about when we're talking about all of these different tools. So generative AI is becoming the umbrella term, if you will, for us to speak about a lot of these machine learning based tools. So these are algorithms that are being used to generate, that's where the generative comes from, text, images, video, audio. They are using data that they have, training data, to create new content. And so you may have heard of tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. What we're speaking about there are frequently large language models. So these are specifically text generating generative AI. And what's happening there is that there's a whole bunch of training data. Frequently, this data comes from scraping websites, taking things like Wikipedia or Reddit forums or text versions of many of the books that are in our popular literature. And then at the basic level, what's happening is that there's predictions based on word associations in the training data. So it's generating the likely next word given a certain word based on associations between words in the bulk of human language that's in the training data. So when you're, this is helpful to know when you're getting output from ChatGPT, it's based on predictions, likely associations between words that have occurred in human language and specifically in the human language in the data that these models are trained on. And so that's a little bit what's going on with ChatGPT, but you may have heard that these tools can be used to make videos, make audio. OpenAI recently introduced this crazy tool called Sora that some of you may have heard of, where it can take text and generate videos that are increasingly realistic from text-based prompts. So this is a little bit about what we're talking about in this realm. We're thinking about AI tools, these algorithms that are producing new content, and that content can take on the form of text, images, video, and audio. Others probably have additional content to add on there too, so I'll turn it over to the other panelists.
So I talk to my students a lot about using generative AI, and I encourage them I encourage them to work with it so that we can talk about what are the best ways to use it. And so one of the things that I often remind them of is that these algorithms are trying to predict the next word that it thinks will make you happy. So if you cut off a bunch of stuff, so for example, a student used generative AI to figure out how they could use the novel Herland to talk about how you could have a society without religion. So they just asked, how could you use Herland to show you this? There is a lot of religion in Herland, but the AI was like, okay, we're just going to focus on how you don't have religion in Herland. And so that student cut out so much of what they actually needed for their paper. So it's really important. You have to be watching to see, is this algorithm trying to make me happy? And if so, what have I misled it into telling me about? And so there is a lot of that kind of, we're still having to work. You will still have to do a lot of human investment in trying to make this work. There's so many good questions in the chat too. So this is exciting.
Thank you, Lindsay. Let's see, Maggie or Yan, would you like to add to what they said about just the basics or the foundations of what we're all trying to grasp about this topic?
Yeah, I guess I can just second what Lindsay and Kaylyn just mentioned. The ChatGPT, the G in ChatGPT stands for generative or generation. I can't remember, but yeah. So I think generative pre-trained transformer. That's the GP. That's what those letters stand for, actually. And yeah, next word prediction is the main pre-training task. One of the main pre-training tasks for all of this. Well, I guess for most of the popular AI models, and it's popular also because it's similar to how we as humans think, right? If you think about it, we do next word predictions all the time on the fly. I mean, of course, there are much more complicated mechanisms we humans have. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that this a lot of AI companies trying to do the PR for, right? Because this next word prediction thing very much aligned with human cognition.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Yan. Thank you. Maggie?
I think that's a great start. I'll let us dive into some questions.
Okay, awesome. The first question I asked is just a general broad question is what are the potential benefits of utilizing generative AI in our workplace, both in terms of efficiency and productivity? I think we can pretty much guess that, but if you have like maybe some statistics around it, maybe in higher education or in the industry, I think that would be helpful. I'll let anyone answer this question. Is that a hard question? Okay, Lindsay.
I don't have any stats. This is something that's still very new. And
Okay.
so been focusing more on one of the things we talk about a lot in the teaching and learning space. So I was on the ad hoc committee about AI on campus, and I've been talking to a lot of people about where could this fit into the work process and really emphasizing how does it fit into the process. So instead of having it make a product. And I saw someone say something about a CV, like two CVs or two resumes having identical bullet points. And that, to me, I would interpret that if a student gave me something and it was obvious that everybody just copied the output from ChatGPT or Claude or one of these things and they gave it to me, I would question how much these people were actually checking over these things and revising them and making them more authentically for them. And so I'll talk to my students a lot about how this really speeds up your ability to dig more deeply into the literature and to really find more kinds of ideas or to help you figure out how you want to organize them. But it's a tool. And so for me, it's also helped me to, I'll ask it, like I'll write up an assignment and then I'll ask Claude and say, hey, would this be clear to an 18-year-old who's never taken sociology before? And Claude's usually like, no. And so then I'll say, okay, what do I need to clarify in this? And then it will help me to clarify different points, to make different words, to emphasize them or to take them away. It'll help me to figure out what I need to focus on in the rubric or what I need to go back and put in there. And so it really is like, it's really useful that way where it could help people to just start the process to get words down. But I don't think it should ever be the end of the process. So I would not want to see a student, and I never want to see a student just give me something they copied and pasted output wise. I want to see your voice. I want you to use this to strengthen yourself. So not stats related, but for the resumes, I would be a little questioning of those candidates and how much they're actually reviewing what they're putting out there.
And I like the fact that you would actually ask a human being is like, is this question clear? I mean, because that's not something that the machine can tell you if it's clear or not. They're just going to answer what I guess what it's literally being told asked, but maybe not in a way that the student needs to answer the question. So yes, you cannot take the human element out of this whole process. So I guess that's what I think that you were saying. So I like that. So thank you. I'm kind of debating. There's so many really, really good questions in the chat that I'm like, I think I might just kind of like, I think it'd be best for our audience, because they did sign up for this, if we go ahead and just go from the top and say, if we can just like briefly, we'll spit the questions. Let's see if we can go ahead and, Steffi, if you could help also navigate these questions, that would be great.
So one of the first ones was my company had two applicants that submitted the resume and had identical bullet points. Resume. That's what Lindsay was just talking about.
So
do you have any advice on how to tell if something was written by ChatGPT or does it really matter in the end of the is factual?
Can you check? Because I know when I used to turn in research papers, they could tell how much of it was copied or not copied, right? Is there a way to do that with resumes for HR offices?
So I'll chime in from the student affairs perspective, right? And it doesn't necessarily have the exact overlap for the HR perspective, for the employment side, right? But I also see a number of comments in here about wanting to know how Purdue is handling AI with students, right? So we'll merge these just a little bit. By and large, there are detection tools out there, and I would just give a big, huge proceed with caution on those, right? That the AI detection tools came out because these large language models were studied and tried to, understand exactly what these patterns were and that language prediction, like was shared earlier. And so these detection tools attempt to measure how much of the content seems to match that exact predictive model and how much of it might line up to what an AI tool could generate. And so whether you're looking at student work or whether it is something that is professionally submitted, that detection tool is making its best guess. Those tools came out initially in April or May of last year, assuming that they would have about a 98% success rate. And within a month, CEOs of those tools, Turnitin, Zero GPT, etc., those came out with statements that said, actually, those numbers aren't super accurate. We're finding our real world data is very different. And so things to understand is that as it's trying to predict certain language, there are certain populations that are flagged as, AI generated when perhaps they're not, right? So neurodiverse individuals, people who do not use English as their first language, they might follow more of those standard patterns. And so they might get flagged more often than others. And so just to be mindful of the bias that can be embedded in those. On the student side of things, we are often having so many conversations with students who get reported, right? So if that, largely AI generated text were to be submitted as an assignment, then in the Office of the Dean of Students with Student Conduct, we are having conversations with students about that process. How did you come up with these ideas, this content? Tell me where you got stuck. What sorts of things did you search? How did you verify your research, right? So we are asking them to engage in deep conversation about their product and their process. And so, of course, on the HR side, if you have capacity, if you're maybe going to move forward with these candidates, you could do some of the same thing about asking about their experiences. But my goal is hopefully you have a large enough candidate pool that if folks are submitting identical resumes, that you might have some more compelling options.
Thank you. So you didn't divert, because actually Joanne asked that question really early on. It's like, how is Purdue handling it with students, And so I think it's a work in progress. It's so new, and there's so many developments happening almost probably daily that you're having to come up with solutions from almost thin air, I can imagine. Okay, next question is, want to know how it's being used in the employment arena? Maybe Julie had asked that. I'm not sure in what way, Julie, if you could maybe clarify. Unless, ladies, you might have an idea of what she's saying here. I'm interested.
Briefly chat.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just I work in the education area, but I was just wondering if there's been we've starting to see some use in it with in employment and employees using it or whatever. I understand the resume part of it, and you guys explained that great, but just if we've seen anything come up where AI is being used more in an employment situation, employee using it, and any issues with that.
Just to briefly chime in, I'm actually working on a study right now that's investigating how AI is being used in human resource management in both the private sector, so in industry, as well as the public sector, so in government. And there are a whole host of applications for AI in employee-facing tasks within government and industry. And this goes all the way from hiring someone. So we saw the example with resumes, right? But there are examples of detecting facial movements or recognizing certain emotions or gestures in videos of employee candidates for certain jobs who might become employees, that are used to, more companies are not doing this now, which is perhaps the good news, but some of these tools were proposed for evaluating candidates in job interviews based on video data. There's a whole suite of tools that are being pitched to companies and government for evaluating job candidates. There are AI tools that are being used to help onboard employees. There are tools that are used to help with annual review of employees for, ongoing on-the-job training, things like, determining which individuals might receive a raise, or even in some cases, providing recommendations or information that might lead to termination and firing. So there's a whole host of, again, these applications within different employment opportunities. And it's really important to think about what impacts this might have in replacing human decision-making in these contexts. And especially as someone who's studying politics, I'm thinking about what this means for the composition of government agencies and the people that are, perhaps the bureaucrats that are the face of the state for many individuals. So a big conversation that's going on is the role of human oversight of these tools. How are we keeping humans in the loop so that these tools are being used for assistance, for recommendation, but also, as we've kind of emphasized in a lot of our conversation tonight, aren't completely replacing human judgment and the human aspect of a lot of our jobs and interactions with one another.
Thank you, Kaylyn. I think we can open that question also to the audience. How are you using it? I'd be interested in seeing that. Maybe put that in the chat. I'll just quickly say that, hey, I use it to help generate questions for all these cocktails and conversations that I do, or even for the never have I ever chat. List of things. I mean, that's what I use it for. Just basic, it's kind of basic, but it's super helpful because it helps put everything together on one list where I don't have to search multiple sites to get something on just 10 questions that I need answered. So yeah, if you want to share how you're using it, that would be great in your workplace. I think Mary Sutter, she asked about deep fake political videos. Who wants to address that one? Can we say deep fake political videos?
So I wasn't sure entirely what the question meant, but I'm happy to talk about, given that I'm building a database of political deepfakes incidents, I can describe what that means and sort of what we're doing.
Sure.
Okay, so some of you may have seen or heard about images or videos, maybe you've seen some on social media, that aren't real images of politicians or aren't real depictions of political events, but they might have real impacts regardless of whether they're real or fake on what we think about politics, what we think about each other, what we think about other political parties. Just to give an example, a few months ago, a fake video of a bombing at the Pentagon went viral, and it actually led to a real world dip in the stock market. So people were responding, people were scared, people, had all of these real reactions to this fake content. And just as another example, some of you may have heard about robocalls that were going out impersonating President Biden's voice. And that led the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, to put to ban AI generated voices in campaign calls. So sort of what we're thinking about and what we're working on here are AI generated deep fakes. So we're thinking about realistic impersonation, realistic fakes of images, video, audio, or there are even things called cheap fakes, which are just less good versions, less realistic, less passable for human generated. So all of these fake audio files, images, videos might be depicting politicians, political events, or political processes. And we want to understand, how are they spreading? Who's spreading these fake images and video and audio? Who are they depicting as the targets of these deepfakes? And then what sort of narratives or frames, what stories are being told in these images and videos that we're all consuming, and how might that be shaping our understanding of politics. Super importantly, we're also tracing efforts to combat deepfakes, right? There are all of these proposed ways to watermark or label synthetic content. So to put a visible indicator in the corner of an image to suggest or to indicate that it's AI generated, or on the other side, to indicate that it's an authentic image. How might these also be labeled or presented on social media platforms to let individuals know what they're interacting with? So we hope to, with this data set, not only track the spread of harmful information, but also to evaluate the impacts of these policies to stop their spread.
Wow, that's really good information. Thank you, Kaylyn. Yan, did you want to add to that? I think you also.
I think that's really fascinating work, Kaylyn. I guess, yeah. I think deepfake, especially in maybe in the voice part, is prevalent everywhere, right? But I think this kind of deepfake detection is especially challenging for understudied languages. I'm sure there are tons of tools probably already out there for English deepfake, right? But probably less so for example, Arabic, Vietnamese, right? So I think that can be a challenge. Yeah.
It's a very broad challenge too. So, I mean, what do you tackle first? Because like with anything else, there are limited resources, right? And so, so good point. Okay, I'm going to have to, let's see, we have 28 new messages here. So ladies, if you want to start answering questions as we type along, so, because I'm not sure we're going to be able to verbally answer. So if you'd like to go ahead and, answer, that would be great.
I'm so glad you just said that, because I've been in there like
Oh
typing.
no,
I
please
thought there's
do
no way
so.
we're gonna get through all of these. So I'm just gonna be a gremlin in the comments.
No, please do so. So I'll just list out some questions that I see once in a while, but then please go ahead and answer them. Someone asked about a chat, if there is a group, maybe an AI group that they can join. That would be awesome. I don't know. Is there? I don't know if you can answer that question, but that would be great. So we obviously have some interested people.
So wait, what kind of AI group are we talking about? So we have different AI. I'm a part of so many AI groups, and Kaylyn leads an AI group. But I put in a couple of newsletters that I follow, and Kaylyn and Maggie and Jan might have some more of these too. But there's an AI education newsletter I follow. There's an AI for that as a newsletter that I follow. And so every day they'll tell you about the latest bots, about what people are using and what these bots are good for. Any of the news that's coming out about them, news stories about especially AI in education. And I'm sure there's some for whatever field you're really interested in. And then from there, you can probably find really niche groups about what you're interested in with AI.
Yeah, maybe like if you could put that in the chat group, that would be great. Then I'm happy to share this with the audience afterwards. I have a mock. Okay, let's see. Steph, if you want to capture a question too. Yeah, please feel free to comment. Observe AI using enhanced customer service. Thank you. Okay, when I asked that question, how are you using it? A lot of people put in what they're using it for. This is great. Maybe it'll also get everybody else interested in figuring out how they can use it for themselves. Do you think that AI needs to be disclosed by the user? Good question. Oh, do you think so? How are you dealing with the ethical parts of this? Who wants to tackle ethical issues relating to the use of AI? Maggie?
I'll just start with that a little bit. So,
sure.
And as I'm gonna delete the half-typed comment I have exactly on that question. I think for me, one of the biggest things is understanding what is the audience and what is the purpose of what it is that you are sharing. And so if this is something that is more in an academic exercise, that it really is important that the knowledge that you are sharing is reflective of you, the research you've done. It's just like citing your sources otherwise. There are ways to cite the AI tools that you've used. And so being reflective of, having integrity and displaying exactly what was yours, exactly where you sourced the information from, and just being crystal clear. Sometimes people, whether it be students, professionals, etc., get confused about, well, I didn't use it to produce the final product, but it was used in AI generation. And there's ways to linguistically acknowledge that and to still cite that in your sources. Whereas on the other hand, if you are just, using an AI tool to generate some information that will then be shared, with a small group to work on a topic, to build off of that, perhaps it's not as necessary in that context to put that citation, to get that in the right spot. So just understand, what is it being used for? How is it being reflective of, and there's my dog napping next to me. How much are you trying to represent that this is your work specifically, and how can you be as honest as possible about how your work has been influenced in the same way that you would with other sources?
I like that. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies, the other ladies are all quickly chat, I think, answering questions. So thank you for that. I have, let me see if I'm pulling it down. Mary, thank you for your suggestion that we should email the resources. Great. I think all the things that you're putting in the chat, we'll see somehow to put it all together, send it out and email it out to the people that registered for the.
I don't envy you unpacking this
I
comment
know. I don't
section,
envy
but
you
I
either.
think there's a lot of interesting. I also want to know what everybody's posting in here, so I would enjoy having that as well.
Okay, wonderful. Maybe we could start like a WhatsApp chat group and say, kind of thing. And people just continue to talk. This is what I found out today. I don't know. But then you also say there are groups that exist. And so maybe join that part of the group or have part of the Women's Network chat, whatever, generative AI kind of section. I don't know. But there are, it looks like a lot of opportunities. Thank you. Oh, I'd love a WhatsApp chat group. Wonderful. Who said that? Would you like to create it? Not like you're already busy, Kaylyn. Okay, let's see. I know it's helpful for me. We've got 15 minutes here. And so with the remaining 15 minutes, ladies, if you want to continue putting questions in the chat, I'm happy to send these off to our guests and see if they can answer it. And then I'll email it all together. In the meantime, let's
Can I
see.
speak to Mary's question really quickly? Because she's
Sure.
posted it twice. And so
Okay.
she's mentioned about worrying about the data you're giving these LLMs going back into the corpus into the training data. And this is an extremely important thing, I think, to be worried about. And so I've become known on these different committees as the person who's extremely concerned with student data privacy, because I am, honestly. And so when I think Maggie was already talking about this, right when OpenAI released ChatGPT, a lot of little bot companies popped up and said, we can assess whether or not your student used AI. So why don't you just go ahead and download everything your student submitted for an assignment and upload it to our bot? We won't do anything with their data, but that's not FERPA protected. And so I ask my students, you can use AI to try to come up with feedback for your peers, but you have to get permission. Never put someone's name attached to their work when you're putting it into a bot. And you don't know, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know how this data will be used. And it's kind of like things probably won't happen that are bad, but just to protect yourself, but also especially stuff that's not yours. Make sure that you're really thinking about how is this getting protected on the other side. So for Mary, I think that's a really, really good thing to think about. Always see, is my data going back into this training model? And what is this company going to do with my data? That's something I wish we'd known about Facebook before we all started clicking away and using it. And now we have amazingly detailed psychographic profiles of all of us online. And so that's something that I think we have learned from social media and should keep moving forward with.
Yep. And it's for eternity that they have that information about us, isn't it? Okay. So one of the last questions that I had before we move on is, I think someone else also asked it, but about the future of all this, how do you, for me in particular, is how do you envision the future of this as it pertains to the university education and student support services? And then maybe in general in the workforce. So regarding in the university sense, though, how do you see that evolving the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 years? It's probably moving faster than that. Is it hard to tell? Hi, Maggie.
I mean, all I'll say is that it's really hard to know, given
Okay.
that ChatGPT dropped in November, December of 2022. And so if we're thinking about people who were first using that tool when it came out, you might have noticed that the answers weren't great. It was frequently easy to tell AI generated content from human generated content. I briefly mentioned Sora, OpenAI's new video generating platform. So we're thinking about what, a year and a half later, and a simple text prompt is producing really ultra realistic videos that many people probably could not have imagined when ChatGPT dropped. And the year before ChatGPT dropped, many people probably didn't realize they would get to that point. So all I'll say is the pace of this technological change is so rapid that it's really hard to predict where it's going to go.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I know I was asking an impossible question, but I was just trying to see, if there was something in your world that you might want to you could share with us that you see coming. But okay. But thank you, Kaylyn. Maggie, you had your microphone off. Did you want to say something too? Okay.
Well, so I was just going to say it is so hard to know, of course, right? Because the tools continue to change. But
yes.
To Lindsay's point, it's the information privacy, it's the information security aspect of it that until there is a better understanding of what information is put in and what information will come out, where it will go, and how it is used, it is going to be, we'll all need to be cautious about infusing it into our work, especially with students. And so, if it becomes a thing, I think about the Dean of Students office and our student support specialists who, if you've got a student of concern report that you're submitting, right? You're worried about a student on campus who's experiencing some difficulty, and you submit the form. In an ideal world, it would be so cool if right off the bat it popped up with, hey, if you're already in communication with this student, here are some great resources that you could connect them to. We will still have a student support specialist from Dean of Students office reach out to them and talk to them, but here are some things right off the bat that you may need. So that could be something really cool. But the hard part is it would need to be secure enough that that information that is being put in about a student, their PUID, some of their personal information, things like that, that we know it is not getting into the wrong hands in the wrong way. And so as long as we can proceed with caution, I think that could be really great, but that's the hope.
Okay, thank you. Looks like it's still a lot of questions out there, right? About this in general, but okay, thank you. Anne, would you like to add to this?
Yeah. I think the future of this AI tools are of course dependent on the users, right? The students, teachers, educators, we as researchers. I think these tools are also pretty much, the future of these tools is also pretty much dependent on the developers. If the developers make, if they are happy to make these tools more and more transparent and efficient, by that I mean make it more accessible, because currently these models are huge. It's impossible for us to run these models without a fancy computer, right? So I think if the developers can make these tools, these models very accessible and train them using smaller data set and fewer parameters and fewer computation powers, I think if that's the case, then I'm pretty optimistic. I think we're absolutely gonna embrace it, and maybe personalize this AI models in whichever way we see appropriate, and even decrease the privacy, the risks of those privacy issues and all that. Yeah.
I love that. We will have to absolutely embrace it because it's coming whether or not we like it or not. Yeah. And we're going to have to adjust and make movements with it. Thank you. I think the last question was really interesting. How would you propose? Oh, goodness. There's so many quite interesting questions. Go ahead. If you want to answer it, that's fine too. I saw someone laughing here. Like I was like, oh. But with the time being, it was Kaylyn. Oh, editor.
Absolutely love how engaged everybody is and how varied these questions are. That the fact that you're even asking these questions, you are already many
Mm,
steps down the whole pathway
mm,
of accepting that artificial intelligence is here. It's not going back in the box, and so we've all got to figure out what does the world look like now. And it's still, I know some people think we are past the point where we can really shape this and how it's going to
mm,
be part of our lives, but
mm,
I'm optimistic that we are going to be able that we can still harness this and use it
mm,
to make the world what we want to see. And so I'm usually optimistic about everything. That's usually the
mhm,
first thing people say in emails back to me is like, I really love the optimism. And so, but I think for legislating it or regulating it, that is definitely more of Kaylyn's
mhm,
back right there. But I
mhm,
think just for you yourself, keep playing with it in ways that you're comfortable with. And some people said it is fun. Like you can have fun with this. Some of my students are having, some of them make a new society and they've started making like avatars for their new societies. So one of them
mhm.
made like a pineapple that's like Jeff Goldblum's character in Thor Ragnarok as the representative of their new society. So like stuff like that is fun.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that probably didn't answer anything, but just keep working with it and see what it's doing.
We just have to embrace it, like Ann said. I know it is coming, but thank you. Before we go into the last part of this portion, I just want each of you just to say, if you had like a wish list, top of your wish list when it comes to this subject, what would it be? I mean, whatever, sky's the limit here. What would it be? Leanne, would you like to start? What's your wish list? What's on your wish list?
Wish list
About the
about
AI,
what? About
about this topic in general, whether or not it's going to be about it being accepted or its usability or accessibility, anything. Or maybe like, I need 20 researchers on this project. I wish the developers were faster. We had access to, unlimited resources. Sky's the limit here. What would you wish to have to make sure that your work advances?
I wish AI models could be more robust and flexible in
Mm,
understanding human language command. So
mm,
when we ask Alexa, right, when we talk to
mm.
Alexa or all kinds of ChatGPT or all kinds of smart speakers or AI models, I wish these models can, to be more flexible. And I don't want to say human-like, but
Okay.
I guess, yeah,
But
robust
human.
and flexible. Yeah.
Okay, robust and flexible. Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Maggie? I'll let you give
Sure.
me your wish.
Sure. I think my wish, just from the understanding that accessibility benefits everyone, is I think starting to understand how AI
Mm,
tools can really benefit folks who may need additional support and assistance in kind of different
mm,
areas of their life, whether it be functionality, understanding, etc.
mm.
So if we can start there, spread the good word out to others, and let others benefit from that accessibility would be great.
I love that. Make it equitable. I love that. Thank you, Maggie. Lindsay?
What I want to see in the future is more conversations around how this is a tool, and more conversations about how we as humans are going to harness this tool
Mm,
to make it work for us and to make the
mm,
world what we want it to be, and to really,
mm,
my hope is that we can really better improve access to really good information and to help people do more to pull it together to answer the questions they're really interested in.
Thank you. Hopefully comes sooner than later, right? Lindsay. Kaylyn, what would your wish be?
So, a couple wishes here. And the first one is more like a aspiration for the future. So it's come up in so many people's comments and posts that, how do we trust what we're seeing? How do we trust each
Mm,
other? How do we trust whether something is AI or
mm,
human generated?
mm,
So my wish, how we get there, is something that I'm working on, and I definitely don't have all the answers to. But my
mm,
hope is that we come to a point where we are able to trust the content that we're engaging with, trust each other, trust government. And this also entails solutions outside of thinking about just generative AI and technical problems or
mm,
solutions. I think this also entails addressing broader societal questions and things, some of which are in politics, that that might be driving us apart. So that's sort of an aspiration, that we reach a point where we build up more trust rather than be worried about breaking things down. Another wish list. So within my focus on AI in government, a real big challenge and question is around local government grappling with AI. There's so much attention on the federal government, or even countries competing with each other in the AI race. And a lot of what I think about is, what does it mean for the level of government that we are the closest with, who directly provides so many services in our lives, to be perhaps implementing AI for the efficiency boost, but also this having a lot of impacts on the services, the values that are put forth in government. So just increase attention to all levels of government, and the ways in which we might be encountering AI in our everyday lives that we might not think about.
Thank you, Kaylyn. And I hope all your wishes come true much sooner than later. You are brilliant women. I am so happy to have you here this evening on this call. Can we give them a virtual round of applause, everybody? That would be great. Thank you so much for attending.